take a breath, not for the world, not for the noise around you, but for yourself. Because there comes a moment in a woman's life when she realizes something unshakable. She realizes that the loudest strength she will ever hold is found in two sacred places: her focus and her silence. Your silence becomes your strength when you finally understand that not every battle requires your voice, not every situation deserves your reaction, and not every person has earned the right to access your energy. There is a moment in every woman's life when she grows tired of explaining herself, tired of defending her choices, tired of offering clarity to people who are committed to misunderstanding her. In that moment, silence becomes more powerful than any argument she could ever make. Silence is the space where your truth stands without shaking, where your boundaries become firm, where your spirit gathers itself after being stretched thin by expectations, noise, and emotional demands. Silence is not emptiness. It is the place where your strength begins to rise from the inside out. When you choose silence, you stop allowing others to pull you into their chaos. You stop letting people turn your peace into their playground. You stop feeding situations that drain you. You create distance, and in that distance, you find clarity. In that clarity, you discover that your value was never dependent on how loudly you defended yourself. You start to realize that silence is the highest form of self-respect, because it means you no longer seek validation from those who are unable to give it. Your silence teaches people how to treat you by removing the access they once took for granted. When you go quiet, those who took advantage of your giving nature begin to feel the void of what they lost. They start to see what they ignored. They begin to notice the weight of your absence, the depth of your presence, and the strength you carried without recognition. Silence reveals more than explanations ever could. Silence makes people confront themselves, their actions, their words, and their intentions. It forces them to look in the mirror without you having to guide them. And as they deal with their own reflection, you rise. In your silence, your energy becomes more powerful. You think more clearly, you feel more deeply, you choose more wisely. You begin to understand who deserves your words and who does not. You start to reclaim your emotional space, your mental balance, your spiritual calm. Your silence becomes the shield that protects your heart from those who do not know how to handle it. It becomes the armor that keeps your dignity untouched. It becomes the foundation upon which your boundaries stand stronger than before. In silence, you hear your own voice again. You hear your intuition guiding you away from what drains you and toward what feeds your soul. You hear your spirit reminding you that you never needed to prove yourself to anyone. You hear the truth that was drowned out by noise, that your worth is self-defined and cannot be diminished by someone's inability to see it. The strength born from silence is quiet but unshakable. It does not scream or demand. It simply exists with confidence, certainty, and grace. It is the kind of strength that makes you walk into rooms differently, carry yourself differently, choose differently. It is the strength that makes you stop chasing and start attracting. It is the strength that turns your silence into a language of its own, one that only those who truly value you will understand. Focusing on yourself rebuilds your inner power in ways you may not notice at first, because self-focus is a quiet transformation. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand applause. It moves slowly, intentionally, like light gently entering a dark room. When a woman shifts her attention back to herself, she begins a process that many people around her will never understand, because they were never meant to understand it. Focusing on yourself is not selfishness. It is self-restoration. It is choosing to rebuild the parts of you that were exhausted from holding everything together while neglecting the needs of your own soul. It is choosing to give yourself the same energy you were so willing to give to others. You begin to see the ways you abandoned yourself, the ways you ignored your own needs to satisfy someone else's expectations. You notice the emotional weight you carried that did not belong to you. You see how your kindness was stretched thin because you kept giving from an empty place. But focusing on yourself changes that. It teaches you that the power you thought you lost was never gone. It was simply buried under layers of distraction, noise, and emotional obligations that drained your essence. When you focus inward, you begin to understand what your heart truly needs. You listen to your own thoughts instead of the opinions that once dictated your choices. You stop apologizing for choosing peace. You silence the voices that convinced you your value depended on how much you sacrificed. And slowly, you start to rebuild. You rebuild your confidence by showing up for yourself in small, consistent ways. You rebuild your emotional strength by refusing to engage in battles that only weaken your spirit. You rebuild your clarity by taking time to understand what you want, not what people expect from you. You rebuild your self-worth by acknowledging the truth that your life does not have to revolve around anyone who does not treat you with care, with respect, with sincerity. As you focus on yourself, you learn to prioritize your mental and spiritual well-being. You create space within you where peace becomes your natural state, not a luxury you experience only when others allow it. You begin to understand the importance of boundaries, not to push people away, but to protect the parts of you that once felt fragile. Your energy becomes more selective. Your time becomes more valuable. Your presence becomes more intentional. You realize you are not obligated to carry relationships that suffocate your growth or remain in environments that dim your light. Focusing on yourself helps you reclaim your voice, not the one you use to speak to others, but the one inside you that tells you the truth about who you are and what you deserve. It is the voice that whispers to you in moments of doubt, reminding you of your strength. It is the voice that guides you toward better choices, better people, better environments. And as you continue this inward journey, your inner power starts to awaken in silence. You feel more grounded in yourself. You feel more connected to your purpose. You feel more certain of what you will no longer tolerate. You begin to attract peace instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, and strength instead of fear. Focusing on yourself shifts your entire life because it shifts the center of your universe back to the place it always should have been within you. Silence exposes people's true intentions in a way that words never can, because when you stop explaining, defending, or trying to be understood, you remove the distractions that used to hide their motives. Most people reveal who they are not in how they speak to you, but in how they behave when you stop giving them the attention, effort, and emotional response they were used to. When you become silent, you give them nothing to react to, nothing to manipulate, nothing to use against you. It is in that stillness that their real intentions rise to the surface. Silence forces people to face themselves without the shield of your voice. When a woman goes quiet, she creates a distance where truth becomes unavoidable. Someone who truly cares will move closer, will reach out, will align their actions with their words. But someone who only wanted your energy, your time, or your emotional availability will slowly begin to fade because your silence removes the benefit they once gained from you. Silence becomes a filter that separates sincerity from convenience. You begin to see who valued your presence and who valued your attention. You start noticing the people who stay consistent without needing reminders, who respect your space without withdrawing love, who show maturity without being asked. At the same time, you see the individuals who only appeared when you were giving, when you were speaking, when you were accessible. You see the ones who become irritated when you no longer respond to their drama, who become distant when you stop giving more than you receive, who become cold when you start protecting your peace. Silence shows you who was connected to your heart and who was connected to your benefits. It reveals who cared for you as a person and who cared only for the version of you that catered to them. It exposes the people who needed your voice to feel powerful, because without your reactions, they have nothing to control. Silence becomes a truth teller, exposing the relationships built on dependency rather than mutual respect. It reveals how someone behaves when they are no longer the center of your world. Do they resent your boundaries, or do they honor them? Do they punish your silence, or do they understand it? Do they step forward with honesty, or do they disappear when you stop carrying the emotional weight for both of you? You also begin to see their patterns more clearly. Without the distraction of your explanations or emotional investment, you can observe their consistency, their attitude, their willingness to stay present even when you're not feeding the connection. Silence helps you see whether someone shows up out of love or out of habit. It shows you whether they were listening to you or just waiting for their turn to speak. It shows you who respects your growth and who fears losing their influence over you. In silence, you learn more about people than you ever did when you were speaking. You see who tries to understand your quiet and who tries to punish it. You see who values your peace and who only valued your availability. You see who makes the effort to communicate and who vanishes when effort is required. And in this revelation, you gain clarity, not from what people say, but from what they choose to do when you give them nothing but silence. Silence becomes the mirror where their truest intentions reflect back at you, showing you exactly who should remain in your life and who should be released without regret. You begin to understand that their actions were always speaking. You just needed the silence to finally hear them. Self-focus attracts what you once chased, because when a woman stops pouring her energy into things that do not grow her, she naturally begins to draw toward her everything that aligns with her worth, her purpose, and her evolution. For a long time, you may have found yourself running after people's approval, chasing opportunities, trying to fix relationships, or forcing yourself into spaces where you were never truly seen. You may have tried to prove your value through effort, hoping that someone would finally notice the love you gave so freely. But something powerful happens when you redirect that same energy inward. The universe responds differently to a woman who knows her value. When your attention shifts from seeking acceptance to cultivating your own strength, you stop vibrating from a place of lack or longing. Instead, you begin to radiate confidence, clarity, and calm. People can feel that energy even without you speaking. Suddenly, what once felt distant begins to move toward you. The relationships you had to beg for begin to fade, making space for genuine ones to enter your life. The opportunities you couldn't reach suddenly appear at your doorstep because your energy becomes aligned with growth rather than desperation. When you focus on yourself, you stop clinging to things that were never meant to stay. You stop chasing people who made you feel like you had to earn their affection. You stop running after situations that drained your spirit. As you release what no longer serves you, you unconsciously open the door for blessings you were too distracted to receive before. You begin to attract peace because you are no longer tolerating chaos. You attract respect because you are no longer accepting disrespect. You attract clarity because you are choosing silence over unnecessary arguments. And you attract stability because your boundaries tell the world what is no longer allowed near you. Self-focus changes the way you carry yourself. Your posture shifts, your energy sharpens, your presence becomes more intentional. You no longer settle for half-hearted efforts from others because you are finally giving yourself the effort you always deserved. People begin to approach you differently. They see your value without you having to highlight it. They feel your strength without you having to prove it. They sense your growth without you having to announce it. And in this new space, you start to draw toward you exactly what matches your inner transformation. You attract people who appreciate silence instead of fearing it. You attract opportunities that align with your authenticity instead of demanding you shrink yourself You attract love that flows naturally instead of love that must be chased. You attract environments that help you grow instead of ones that drain you. You begin to notice that the more you heal, the more you attract healed energy. The more you love yourself, the more you attract those who know how to love without conditions. The more you protect your peace, the more life places you in peaceful spaces. Self-focus also strengthens your intuition. You start to recognize instantly what is meant for you and what is not. You no longer confuse attention with affection or consistency with convenience. You feel the shift inside you, and that shift changes everything outside you. Instead of running after people, you become the woman people run toward. Instead of chasing moments, you become the woman who creates them. Instead of searching for your place, you become the woman whose presence feels like home. When you focus on yourself, you stop trying to fit into places that were never aligned with your spirit. And as you rise, your energy rises with you, drawing toward you everything that reflects your new level of self-worth. The truth is simple: when you stop chasing, life starts choosing you. Sacred boundaries transform your life because they teach the world how to treat you, and more importantly, they teach you how to treat yourself. For too long, you may have tolerated behavior that drained your spirit simply because you wanted to be kind, supportive, understanding, or loyal. You may have allowed people to cross lines that should never have been crossed because you didn't want to seem difficult or ungrateful. You may have stayed quiet about what hurt you, thinking silence would keep the peace, not realizing it was breaking your own. But the moment a woman realizes her boundaries are not walls but protection, everything in her world begins to shift. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define your worth. They tell others what is acceptable and what is not. They tell you where you end and where someone else's responsibility begins. They are the structure that protects your energy from being consumed by people who do not respect the value of your presence. When you start setting boundaries, you begin to reclaim pieces of yourself you didn't even know you had lost. You reclaim your time by refusing to give it to situations that keep you stuck in cycles of confusion or emotional chaos. You reclaim your mental peace by saying no to conversations that leave you feeling depleted instead of understood. You reclaim your emotional power by walking away from those who benefit from your softness, but never reciprocate your loyalty. Boundaries teach you to stop apologizing for choosing yourself. They help you understand that peace is not something you must beg for. It is something you create by refusing to allow anything or anyone to disrupt your inner balance. They help you realize that distance is sometimes the greatest form of self-love, not because you hate others, but because you love yourself enough to protect what matters. As you begin to strengthen your boundaries, the dynamics around you start to reveal themselves. Some people will respect your new strength because they value you. Others will become uncomfortable because they only valued the version of you that kept giving without limits. Boundaries expose who was truly in your life out of love and who was there out of convenience. They reveal who is willing to meet you at your new level and who is only comfortable with you having none. You also start to treat yourself differently. You stop tolerating disrespect, even subtle forms of it. You stop allowing your empathy to be used against you. You stop justifying why someone's behavior hurt you and start acknowledging that your feelings matter. You begin to understand that maintaining boundaries is not selfishness. It is the foundation of emotional and spiritual maturity. Boundaries make room for healthier connections. When you no longer allow what drains you to stay close, you create space for relationships that honor you, uplift you, and support your evolution. You attract people who bring clarity instead of confusion, effort instead of excuses, truth instead of manipulation. You also begin to feel the difference within yourself. You stand taller, you think clearer, you breathe easier, you trust your instincts more deeply because you are no longer betraying yourself to keep others comfortable. Boundaries also protect your growth. As you rise, not everyone will rise with you, and not everyone should. Boundaries allow you to let go without guilt, to move forward without explaining, to evolve without seeking permission. They help you prioritize your healing so that you never shrink yourself to fit into places you have outgrown. A woman with boundaries is a woman who understands her power. She no longer gives unlimited access to her heart. She no longer entertains what disturbs her peace. She no longer allows people to rewrite her worth. She becomes intentional with who she allows near her spirit because she knows her energy is precious. Boundaries transform your life by transforming you, reminding you that protecting your peace is not a luxury, but a necessity, and that the moment you honor your own worth, everything around you